AFC Podcast. My name is Victoria Fragnito, and I am joined by my co-host, Jim Galizia. Say hi, Jim.
Hi, everyone. I'm not going to say hi, Jim. I did that last time, and it just became a bad recurring joke. Stop the joke right here, right now, in this episode. Otherwise, it will be a thing, and I don't want it to be a thing.
It will never end.
I will be the king of bad jokes. We're going to talk about a lot of things today, namely our day player, Jillian Vitko. We're going to talk about her acting career, her musical improv comedy show titled On the Spot. We're going to talk about her one-woman show, Synesthesia the Musical, Unarmed Man, another film on Amazon Prime that you guys can check out, and Citizens of New York, another project she's involved in. She's doing a lot of stuff. She's doing a lot of different projects. She's an actress, but she's also a little bit behind the scenes. She writes a lot. We're going to get into that a little bit later. We're also going to talk about her movie of choice, When Harry Met Sally, from 1989, 2 years before I was born.
Oh, God.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm not the I'm not the biggest romantic comedy fan. I don't know. We've already talked about this a little bit. But Jillian does do a lot of musical stuff. I do like musicals. Musicals are fun. What's your favorite musical? Do you have a favorite?
Oh God. I would have to say
Opened up a can of worms there.
Well, see, it's tough because, as a theater person, there's a range of musicals. There's the classic musicals. There's, this whole resurgence of musicals like Hair in the 60s and 70s. And then, you have modern day musicals like rock operas and stuff like that. But I would have to say my favorite is Next to Normal. It won the Tony Award, I think, in 2008 or 9. Please don't quote me on those dates. But it's an incredible rock opera. It has a lot to do with depression, bipolar disorder, mental illness. It's not your typical like jazz hands musical. But I love that show. The music is incredible. The story is incredible. That's my favorite, for sure.
For me, it's not a great musical if Neil Patrick Harris doesn't jump out and go, jazz hands. But that's not true. I'm a big fan of Broadway shows. I have been to quite a few of them. I saw Wicked like 3 times. I saw the very last Broadway show for The Music Man. So that was fun. I've seen Jersey Boys. Recently saw, not a musical, but I saw the Harry Potter play. The Cursed Child, and that's a huge 2-parter. It's like a 5.5, 6-hour show. That was a great time. That was fun. I'm a big theater fan. It's just I don't like going to theater like by myself. I don't know if you've ever been to a show by yourself.
No, I went to a movie recently, not recently, but like within the last 2 years by myself. And that was a new experience, but I don't know if I would feel the same going to a theatrical show by myself. Some people love it. They love doing it, but something about that live interaction with the actors on stage and all that stuff. I feel like I would want a human that I'm connected with right next to me to share it with.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Like funny buddy, like, haha, you see what they did up on stage. Oh my God.
This is great, or we both think this sucks, right?
We can go after the intermission. But I mean,
don't do that. That's rude. Don't do it.
I've never done that. In fact, I've never been disappointed by a show. I'm easy to please. Harry Potter had like an 1.5-hour intermission. They basically did
between the two of them, right?
Yeah. So I did it. Sometimes some people do it in like they'll watch part 1 like on a Saturday, and then I'll watch part 2 on Sunday. I did the whole thing in one day. My family bought tickets. We said we'll spend the whole day. They came out from Long Island. We came into the city, and it was a great day. I mean, it was perfect to like watch part 1. It was like 2 hours roughly or so, maybe a little bit more. I'm not really remembering. Back before COVID, so it was like so long ago.
Time was something completely different back then. Time means something completely different now.
It feels like a past life at this point. Yeah. But the show's like about 2.5 something hours long, and then there's like an 1.5-hour break, which is perfect because by the time you get out of that show, it's probably like, I think it was like 5:30. And then the next show started at like 7. So, of course, we went to dinner, got some food, went back, watched the next part of the show. It's a great show. Really fun. More musicals, though. Wicked is probably the one I've seen the most. So I guess I can say that's my favorite musical. My favorite play, of course, is Scar Tissue. 100%.
Oh, thank you.
Because I know that if we don't shower you with compliments, you will leave. You will
I
just
will. That's
fuck
it.
this
That's
podcast.
the only reason I'm doing this is that people tell me how wonderful I am.
Right. If your ego is not up here, you're done. I'm
I get it.
leaving the room.
That's it.
Also saw Lion King. I saw Aladdin, all the Disney ones. Those were great.
Well, see, that now we're starting to get into territory where I feel a little about movies and musicals and how they're crossing over each other. And
you don't think Rocky should have been a musical?
no, I don't. No, I think I get it. Putting on a musical, especially on Broadway, is a multi-million-dollar venture for one show. So you have to make sure people are going to care enough to come and see it and pay the money in order for you to keep paying the actors, to keep the lights on in the theater. But we've been completely inundated with these crossover musicals. And then after a while, it's just, why can't we do anything new? I mean, one of the reasons why I love Next to Normal so much is it's such an original idea. And the musicals that do the best are the ones that aren't cookie cutter off of, at least at the Tonys anyway, are the ones that aren't the cookie cutter off of, movies and stories that have already been told.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not the most versed in theater. My family says, why don't we see a Broadway show? And I go, great. And that's about it. And then I see it and then I like it and then tell people about it when I can. But I don't actively pursue it, if that makes sense. So when you said Next to Normal, I was like, sounds cool. Never heard of it. But of course I've heard of Lion King. Of course I've heard of Aladdin. Of course I've heard of all these big productions that are just reboots of reboots of reboots.
Well, and that's exactly why they put those up there, because they know that tourists coming in, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Times Square is inundated with those types of musicals and with all of the chain restaurants and chain stores that everybody knows, is because everyone's all, they come to New York. And I remember when I was younger, I would come to New York and not leave Times Square and be afraid to venture to anything that I didn't know. So they see things that are familiar and comfortable, and they're more likely to spend money on it, even though it costs $50 million more at the Applebee's in Times Square, as we know. Yeah. It costs so much more and you get none of the deals, but you know what you're getting out of it. And if you know that you like the movie Tootsie, then you're more likely to go spend the ridiculous amount of money it costs to get 2 tickets to it.
Yeah.
Because I like that story, so I'm probably going to like this. I will say, however, though, I think that movies turned into musicals tend to be better than musicals that are turned into movies. I will say that.
Yes, I think I would almost say that movies turning into musicals, it almost happens more often than musicals turning into movies. Or if it doesn't, there must be a lot of really bad musical movies out there that are adapted from a play or a musical. Just because, I'm trying to think of one, and just off the cuff, I can't really think of a show per se. I thought of Across the Universe, which I personally love that. It's based on all the music of the Beatles. Yep. I'm trying to think of another one. I just can't.
I know nothing's really cropping into my head that started as, I'm sure there are. I'm just not, I'm not remembering any at the moment.
That's not a good sign. That's, you see, we can think of 8 Broadway shows immediately that are, I'm sure people listening to this that might be a theater junkie or something might sit there and go, there's 15 off the top of my head. But I got nothing. I straight up think of Lion King. I think of Aladdin. I think of all those that were just, Disney movies. I mean, Lion King, too, is an adaptation of something else. What was an adaptation of? It's not.
Well, everyone says that it's an adaptation of Hamlet. However, though that's like a myth story, there's no qualifying evidence.
Right.
There's a lot of interviews. There are people that were on the creative team behind it are like, it's not, we can see the similarities, but it's not. There's also a rumor that it was stolen from, I think it was a Japanese cartoon. That story.
I remember that. It was like Kimba or something, and it was about a
something.
lion or a mountain lion named Kimba or something silly like that. It was so close to Simba.
Yeah.
I remember that, and it was like a white animal cub of some sort. Who knows, man? I mean, at this point,
But, I mean, that's one of the exact reasons why you could say that like Broadway musicals, movies turned into musicals, tend to be much better adaptations than musicals turned into movies. You look at what Julie Taymor did with The Lion King, with the costumes and the puppetry and all of that stuff, and how incredibly immersive it is. And even though it's not like an actual lion on stage, you know, the movement and the dance and all of that, you still get completely lost in it. But then when you turn a musical like Les Mis, where, you know, once you see the barricade turn on that big turntable in front of you in the theater, that's like a magical moment that you can't explain. And then you see it in CGI on a big scale, like it loses the magic of it. And I think that goes back to something that you and I have talked about before, of how like too much CGI is not a good thing. You know, it ruins the magic of it. Like one of the most impactful things about Jurassic Park, for example, is the fact that they used actual animatronic dinosaurs, so it looked so real.
they
And
did that for a lot. There were some parts, of course, where they have like wide shots of a T-Rex, and they couldn't make an animatronic T-Rex. They probably couldn't even do that today. Maybe they could, but I'm not going to say they couldn't. Be wrong.
to move the way they needed it to move, but they could make an animatronic T-Rex if that's big. It's just not going to run and chase and do all that stuff. Probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it should be said that they did do that. They built an animatronic T-Rex, at least a head. I don't remember if it was the whole body or anything, but this way it could like bump up against the car. I just did it. I just bumped my head against nothing. They for a lot of the shots that were CGI, those shots are extremely impressive too, because when it's a completely CGI T-Rex, if you watch, there's a YouTube account called Corridor Crew. If you look them up, they do reaction videos to different special effects things. I'm going to send you a couple because they're fun as hell.
Okay.
They also do stunt person reactions. So they bring in a stunt person. They brought in the guy that does all the stunt stuff for Black Panther. And they sit down with them and they watch just different stunts, or they watch different CGI effects, and then they comment on it and they call stuff out. And all of them, too, are CGI effect artists. So they can say all the technical things that my brain just goes, that doesn't look right, but they can say why it doesn't look right, and it makes me think I know what I'm talking about. So I love those videos. But yeah, they talked about Jurassic Park at one point, and the reason it's done really well and the reason it looks really nice is because they filmed it at night and they filmed it when it was raining. So it's very easy to mimic a wet texture as opposed to a dry texture. It's much easier to mask a bunch of CGI issues under darkness because it's nighttime. So they really planned all those things perfectly, because if you watch some movies today come out and they have such bad CGI, and it's like, well, if they could do it right way back in the early 90s when they did Jurassic Park, how can they still be so bad at it? And a great portion of it is giving the video effects artists the time is the biggest killer, 100%. They talk about it all the time, where they say if they're not given enough time to do something, it's going to look rushed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, movies have deadlines, movies have budgets, people have to stick to those things, but it compromises your film in certain ways. So I mean, it's an important part of it, and I think visual effects artists, stunt people as well, they are overlooked sometimes in the film industry.
Well, I mean, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later when we get into our current events. But I was reading the article that you sent me about the Academy Awards, and there's still no category for stunt performing, and I think that's insane.
Yeah, I think they have a category for best visual effects,
Yes.
But there's so many subgenres within visual effects that it's crazy. I don't think there's there's a distinction between practical effects. I think that's just considered like makeup and effects. But when you have something like Jurassic Park, sometimes they create a category when there's enough films to compete against one another. So when you have like 4 or 5 different movies that all did a lot of practical effects, it's easy to say, let's put these against each other and give them an Oscar. But when you only have one movie that came out that year, which is going to be a problem this year because there's only so many movies that are coming out, when you only have one movie that excels in one great way, like say, just for example's sake, practical effects. If there's one movie that comes out all year that has really great practical effects and nobody else does it make sense to have that Oscars category and just give them a win because nobody else was there to compete? Win by default, but another thing I wanted to talk about too, circle back a little bit, is all film is an adaptation, really, when you think about it, because nobody, and I guess technically Jillian, we're going to talk about her improv show that they filmed, where they just plop the camera down and they just go.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only thing I can think of where someone doesn't put something on paper and then adapt it to film. Sometimes movies are adapted from comic books, movies are adapted from books, plays and musicals are adapted from films. Everything is an adaptation unless it's completely improv in the moment.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I mean, if you write a screenplay, that is not an adaptation. That's a film.
Right. But there's always a director that comes in and says how they visualize that. So if you get Steven Spielberg and you get Christopher Nolan and they read the same script and they both make the same movie, they're going to have 2 completely different movies.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an adaptation.
I don't know. That's where, see, I might fight you on that one. Because they're both, basically the job of the director, at least in my eyes, is to work with the actors and work with the other filmmakers and camera people, technical people. He's basically the middleman for everybody on set to come and say, this is what we want to contribute to this adaptation of this thing that's written. Because I mean, the director might write it also, but then they're adapting to film, because there's hardly ever a situation where a director or a writer or someone writes something and they make exactly that. There's always a studio steps in or the director changes something and they say, visually, this would make sense if we did it different. And then they change it slightly.
Well,
and then
right.
Adaptation.
I can understand that point of view, but like going back to your example of like if you take one script and Christopher Nolan takes it and Steven Spielberg takes it and they make 2 completely different things, plays do that all the time. They're always, but they don't call it an adaptation. They'll call it like a revival or something on Broadway. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an adaptation. It's just a revival. They're doing the same script. They're not adapting it to fit anything else. See, adaptation to me means you're adapting that story to fit a different medium or a different way that you're going to tell it. If you're not telling it for the initial way that it was created, you're creating a script for film. Then or like, for example, what Jill's doing with one of her projects, she's adapting her solo show to be a series. That is an adaptation.
For sure. I agree to that too. Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on your perspective of what an adaptation is. I'm sure people, I mean, if you're writing something for a certain medium, it's part of the process, whether it's an adaptation or not technically. But that's just how I thought of it. I always think of it as, because whenever you're approaching a project too that maybe you didn't have involvement from the beginning, and maybe that's a big contributing factor, when a writer comes to you, like I have a writer friend who approached me about shooting a film for him, and I read his script and I said, well, you don't have the budget for half of this shit, so we're going to have to adapt. And then the word adaptation came to be, And I was, I think that's when it clicked. And this was like last year where I had almost, not an epiphany. It's such a strong word to have an epiphany, but it was like, all films are adaptations. And that's where it sit with me after that. But that's me, that's just me. What the hell were we talking about?
We got so far from talking about movies and musicals, and then getting into all the way from there to here.
And redos and all that stuff. That was a fun tangent, though. Yeah. Let's get into our day player. She brought a clip along. It is her reel, I believe. Victoria, you want to take it?
Yeah, so Jill is sharing with us her reel so we can get kind of a taste for what she does as an actor, but Jill is so much more than that. She's a writer, she's a creator, she's a musician. So let's take a look at it, and when we come back, we'll bring her on and we'll talk to her.
Sounds good.
Subscribe! That was my friend. Her dog swallowed a rock.
Oh my God.
So I gotta go make sure it comes out.
Dog?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. I gotta run though.
I got you.
You have to tell me everything about it. Like, you have to tell me where it happened, how it happened, when it happened.
I'm just gonna let you guys talk about this.
No, don't go.
It's fine. I don't want to get in the middle of like a friends with benefit sort of thing.
No, that's not what this
friends
is.
with benefits.
No,
I'm not really sure why she's coming, but we're excited to have some new ideas here at the Sagamore. I just don't think there's a lot for her to do. There's not a lot wrong.
He was just the guy.
Well, he had a gun. He had a gun, and he reached for it. Right?
Detectives get a description of the suspect from their witness, Christine Porter.
The cleaning lady described the assailant as a young white male.
How tall?
Like maybe 5'9".
20 to 25 years old, 150, 170 pounds.
If you saw him, would you recognize him?
Yes.
Christine agrees to work with police and heads to the station.
1 star.
Oh, he liked my smile.
Okay, so we have with us Jillian Vitko, an actor, a writer, a musician, an all-around wonderful human being. Hi, Jill.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, we're doing okay. Living that quarantine dream,
Yep. What a dream.
So, Jill, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started acting, what pulled you into TV film world, anything like that. Give us a little background about yourself.
Sure. So I went to University of Pittsburgh for theater, and I hung around Pittsburgh after I graduated, because when you're in college, you just do college stuff. So I was like, oh, let's see what's in the world, and Pittsburgh had some great, they have some great theater companies, and they actually, even more so now, film a lot of stuff there. So, I did a bunch of shows. I did my first web series there, which was super fun, but, it just got a little old. So then I came to the big city 6 years ago, and yeah, I've just kind of been doing whatever I can. So I do a little, I still do theater, I do film, TV, comedy, drama, whatever, because I love it all, So, yeah, that's kind of a little bio about me.
Well, do you have a favorite between theater, film, TV, anything like that?
I ask myself that a lot, to be honest. I do. I mean, I do love TV, I think, more than anything. I would prefer to watch it. I would prefer to do it. I like that you're investing in characters over time. Like when I've done series that I get to be the same person in different circumstances, it's really interesting. So I would say that, yes, that's my favorite, but it's like not super higher than the rest, like I do love, like when I don't do theater for a while, I miss it. So it's hard to pick one, but if I had to, I would say TV.
Do you fluctuate where you're like, I've done TV for like a year now, I'm sick of it, and I want to do a little theater a little bit?
I mean, that'd be great to be doing so much TV that I'm sick of it. No, but I think it's more like because I think I do more film. I don't know. I think I do a little more film maybe than theater now. So when I don't do, I do a lot of comedy theater. So like when I'm not doing like a show, I do sometimes miss that. So I think that's more the thing that I will realize. I'm like, oh, I haven't like memorized a, Tennessee Williams script lately. You know what I mean? Like that's fun. And it's different than filming and just, memorizing contemporary stuff for like chunks at a time. You know what I mean? Like knowing a whole show is fun, I think.
No, I completely agree with you. Sometimes it's nice to kind of have that whole journey in one little package instead of, okay, I get a little bit here. Next week, I get a little bit more.
Right. And it's harder for me, I think, to do, like when I've done shows like 6 days a week for weeks at a time, like that's difficult. I think for anyone, but like for me, I you have to find ways to reinvent it. So I kind of like that challenge, but I think that's why I prefer film too, because I think it's more fun for me. I don't have to find like new ways to make it different
and keep it fresh.
Yeah, which is, I like doing that. It's just, if I had to pick one to do forever, it would be.
We're forcing you to make a choice right now.
Right. If I'm being held at gunpoint.
You have to pick one.
This is so much pressure.
I personally love working on films because it's something that you can kind of close the book on. You can be, open curtain, close curtain. Cool, I worked for a month straight on this film. Job is done. The film will either be really bad or really good. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't change after that. I mean, sometimes there's reshoots and stuff, but with a series or something like a web series or a TV show, you can adapt and your character can evolve and change. And you might have started playing this shy young woman, and now you're this strong, confident woman by the end of it. I just thought of House of Cards just because of, she's always a strong woman, but then she was president. But then, and then the same, I guess, can be said for theater, because if you keep playing the same role over and over again, I don't know, does it become, I have never acted in theater besides like 5th grade play where I was a tree. So I didn't evolve my character. I was just a tree. Do you guys ever have that situation where there was a role you were playing in theater and you keep doing it? Does it get repetitive, or do you kind of evolve with it? Do you try to change the character a little? What do you guys do? Posing the question for both of you.
Sure. Yeah. You can't really like change it outwardly. It definitely changes internally, like the new things you discover, but like you still have to do what you're supposed to be doing, like from what the writer or director wants. So it is interesting to see how like you hear things differently, especially if you have like a monologue and it like feels different depending on like when you're doing it. So that is interesting because it's fun to discover for yourself, but like the goal is to not, like each audience should get the same, like whatever the goal is of that character, like that should be what they get every time,
For sure, yeah.
I think there's also different circumstances and situations where, like, for example, Jill, I know Jill because she is an actor in my play. And she's been an actor in my play since the very first reading all the way up till now and continuing. So she's played that same character and she's grown that character through the whole thing. I think it's a little different because we've been developing the script.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but that has been interesting because it's like different iterations, because the character has grown a lot too. Like the first draft was only in like 2 scenes or whatever, and now in different scenes you get more of who she is. So yeah, I've discovered more about her, which has been nice. So that like developing a character is fun because you are like changing it and being like, well, wait, this doesn't make sense. So like, how do you like justify whatever they're doing? And that's fun. For sure.
Now, Jill, you're also a musician. So how long have you been doing that? What started you on your musical path?
I guess I was in high school, and I like found an old guitar in my house and had to restring it because I'm a lefty. So I like restrung it and I kind of taught myself. I guess I'm a musician, but I'm not like, you know, I just taught myself how to play guitar, piano, and ukulele. And I just wrote stuff, you know, over the years. So then last year I put it all together into a musical because I had all this stuff that shouldn't just be sitting there, in my opinion. I was like, what is it doing? Just, you know, sitting there. So yeah, I just literally picked it up one day. I think the first day that I picked up the guitar, I like wrote a song. Like, it's just, that's why I wanted to play music. Like, it was like, I want to create through this thing now, you know? It wasn't a great song, but it was a song, you know?
Well, I think everyone's first scene that they wrote, first song that they wrote, first thing that they shot on a camera is probably not.
Yeah.
But
right.
I've always been amazing.
But you got to do that.
Oh, really?
The first thing I shot was a masterpiece. It was incredible. That is untrue. That's very false. I still cringe when I go back and I look at some of the stuff that I filmed in like college and that.
Yeah.
When I got out of high school, I think honestly I was like better in high school, and then college I just got worse. And then after that I got a lot better. I was like, oh, okay, now I'm realizing these things are bad. Let me do this.
Right.
You do a weekly show, is that right? You do
I do.
A musical comedy show. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's called On the Spot, and it's a combination of improv comedy and cabaret. So we have like 4 or 5 singers who sing 2 songs each. So it's like 10 songs throughout the night, and then after each song, the actors improvise a scene so that we're making a narrative comedy. And the actors can also improvise musical numbers as well. So you get kind of like this weird musical that's partially written songs, partially improvised songs, and hopefully it all wraps up at the end. And it's like seeing a brand new musical every Monday. It's super fun. But now we're doing, you know, since we're not performing on stage, we're doing like little scenes every couple days. We're putting them out, and then we're doing a live virtual show next Monday. So you should check that out. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Cool show, very cool.
Yeah.
You're right now you're doing stuff. Are you doing things via Zoom, or are you like doing just like pre-recorded and then putting it on YouTube, or?
Yeah, so we're recording the scene, we're pre-recording the scenes, and then we put them up. We like whatever the word is, post them. I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But yeah, on Monday we're doing a live, I think it's on Zoom, and then it'll be streamed to YouTube. So it's a live show with, there's a choir that's going to do all the music. So it should be fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
So Jill, you have a one-woman show that you do that I was very lucky to get to direct.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about it and where you got the idea to start it, where it's been so far, and what you're planning on doing with it.
So, like I said before, I had all of this music and I wanted to do something with it. So I knew for a while that I wanted to write a musical, like acoustic musical, because most of my stuff is on guitar. So I kind of wanted to be like a alternative musical. But it's really hard to start with a bunch of music and put it into a story. So I struggled for a long time trying to figure out how to put these all together. And then I was like, oh, well, why don't I just use the real things that inspired them, you know, throughout my life. So that was like a breakthrough. And I kind of found the story, and then like the spin on it was that it was about synesthesia, which is, you should Google because it's complicated, but I mean, you know what it is, but for those out there listening, it's basically your senses are blended. So you might see a letter and like see a color at the same time, or hear a sound and feel a color. It's very color oriented, but mine is with people. That's the strongest one. So that kind of was like the through line of the show. And once I realized that, it kind of like took off, and then I just wrote it and finished it, and I submitted it to festivals. So I went to Edinburgh last year and New York Theater Festival, which was great and fun. And it was, you know, it was a learning experience, but I, instead of trying to keep performing it right now, well, not right now, because I can't do that anyway, I want to turn it into like a TV series. And I think that, especially because it's about synesthesia, this is a better medium to like kind of bring the viewer in to like what I'm seeing. And sort of, I don't know, I just can really like imagine it as a series. So I've been writing that, and I'm really excited about that. And, you know, it's kind of different because it's a musical series, which are great. You know, I'm a big fan of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It's probably the biggest one. And yeah, so it's going, you know, and I hope that once we're out in the world, it'll, you know, get its feet.
Yeah, that's the thing with a lot. I mean, we keep saying this in every podcast we record. Everybody has this project that they're working on. Mm-hmm. Coronavirus, COVID, you know, punched it in the face, and it's on hold right now.
Yeah.
But just for clarification's sake, because I didn't know what it was, how do you say it? Synesthesia?
Yeah, synesthesia. Mm-hmm.
Is a condition in which one sense, for example, hearing, is simultaneously perceived as if by one or more additional senses, such as sight. I just Googled that.
Yeah,
now I know.
It's not a thing that a lot of people know about, and I didn't know I had it until a few years ago when someone was like, oh, you have synesthesia, from what I was like describing. So it's been, I mean, that in itself was like a huge thing because I didn't know I had this my whole life. So it's been partially like researching it at the same time because I do things or think things I don't realize are weird, you know? So that's been interesting too.
I have to ask, I'm really interested in what it's like trying to adapt a project that you already have for a different medium. Mm-hmm. How are you finding that?
I think I told you my first draft of the show was like, it was like 3 hours long. Like it was nuts. So for me, it's been nice to be able to like open up those areas where I wanted to put more information in. And it's also nice to have other characters in the show or in the series, because in the show it was just me talking. So I've actually found it like kind of freeing because I felt like, especially with the festivals I was submitting to, it had to be under 45 minutes. So I had to like cut a lot of stuff. And so it's nice to be able to like open it up. But yeah, I mean, it's different. You know what I mean? It's like, it's becoming something else while still staying the same thing. But I like that I can do so much more with it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's fun. Yeah.
How far are you in the changeover process? Do you have like a couple episodes written? Do you have like, where are you at?
So I have pretty much the first season written, which is 8 episodes. But I have been going back in the quarantine and editing it. So it's sort of, I have to like go back through and see like what makes sense and what doesn't. And then I also like have the outline in my head for season 2. So I'm like getting ahead of myself. So I'm trying to like just focus on getting season 1 done. But yeah, I'm just kind of figuring out how long I want to make them and like what to include and what to add and all that stuff. So now I'm just kind of, going back and like going over it to look for all that stuff.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing or you're getting too far ahead of yourself with season 2 because, you know, if you are going to approach other people or production companies or whatever to try and develop it, they're going to want to know where is this going. So I mean, I think it's a smart thing to do. But you're welcome. But it's a huge undertaking. But that's awesome. I think I find that completely fascinating of taking a project that you already have and flipping it to like 180 degrees to something completely different and trying to keep the core of it the same way.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say that so have you guys watched Fleabag?
Not yet.
You got to. It's so good. So I love Fleabag, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge did Edinburgh like 5 years ago or something with Fleabag, the solo show. So I got to see her perform that, not live, but they had a showing at somewhere in New York at a theater. So that was also helpful because yeah, it's weird like taking a solo show and like turning it into a series, but she literally did that. And so watching her show, especially after I saw what the series was like comforting in a way, because I'm like, oh, like someone else did this and it was fine. I mean, she's a genius, but like it was, still like nice to see like, oh, this is, I think I told you when I saw it, I was like, oh, like we have similar, like we both did a solo show, you know what I mean? Like it was just her like telling her story, and then it became this amazing series. So yeah, it was really nice to be able to see like where it began and where it ended. So it kind of gave me like new inspiration for mine.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about The Unarmed Man on Amazon Prime. What's that all about?
Yeah, so that's a great film. It just came out like a week or two ago. We shot in DC, and it's a great, it's very relevant to all the police brutality that we always see in the news. And it's sort of like the gray area of the situation of what happened, because it focuses a lot on like the interview with the cop and him describing why he shot this person. So I play the cop's fiance or wife, one of those. And yeah, I mean, you should watch it. It's streaming. I think it's free with Prime. I don't want to give too much away, but it's suspenseful. The whole time you're kind of like, who's right, who's wrong, because in the news you're very frustrated, right, by all this stuff that you see, and it's just really interesting to see this take on it in the film. So
very cool. Yeah, I
check
could
it
do a
out.
whole podcast on how much I hate all news networks recently.
Yeah.
Just all their coverage is like, people are dying, here's a puppy playing with a ball, and they do a fluff piece or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the film actually starts out with a lot of the news coverage and like clips from the big stories that we've all heard about. So like right away you're like incensed. You're just, you know what I mean? You're just like on the edge of your seat the whole time. So yeah, it's good.
Very cool. Let's talk too about Citizens of New York. I want to hear about that comedy series.
Yes. So that is, my episode came out before quarantine, and it's an improvised comedy series. So Sammy Hutchinson created the whole thing, and last year he created an episode a week for the whole year, and he just got improvisers together and like gave kind of a rough idea of what he wanted, or what, like, it was very collaborative. And then we just shot some weird stuff, and he edited it so that it was funny. And
it's all improv?
It is, yeah, it's all improvised. And yeah, it was super fun to work with a bunch of different improvisers, and I love making stuff up, and it's nice to do it on film. And it was really great, and it's really funny. So you should also check that out, because it's a good series.
Very cool.
But I think he's still releasing episodes, yeah.
Nice. I was an episode a week too that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, he's just like, why not? Like, I know all these funny people, let's just do it. So it was great. I mean, he was hustling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do they give you any parameters for the episode, and then you just kind of take it from there, or how does that work?
Yeah, so he excuse me, he emails you, and he asks if you have any like character ideas or anything you want to do or put in the episode. Like, he'll play to people's strengths, but if not, he'll kind of give you, just like, oh, this person, like the episode I did, I was like a social media star. It was like up for an award, and she had this roommate who was jealous of that, because she was also trying to be a social media star. So that's kind of all we had. And then we just improvised, and what came out of it. And we filmed maybe like a few hours, and then the episode's like 10 minutes. So he just kind of lets us run free, and then when he's editing, I think whatever he finds he puts together that makes sense, because we just kind of just live in the moment and find the weirdness in whatever the situation is. So it was super fun.
Very cool. Something similar I just saw on Netflix was Ben Schwartz and Thomas Middleditch.
Mm-hmm.
They just came out with an improv show. I don't even know how many episodes it is, but it's just they get up on stage and they talk to an audience member and they pick them out, and then they just go for an hour. improv on whatever those people say. So one of them was like, I'm getting married, or I know someone getting married, and they just they did a whole wedding. They pretended to be all the different characters, and those guys are hysterical. So, I mean, improv is fun. It's fun to watch.
It is. I love it because you just get to like not be in your head and just go for it. You know, it's great, especially musical improv, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I think especially too. Sometimes you watch like SNL, and there's these planned skits, and the actors break a little.
Yeah.
Those are the funniest moments to me because it's almost like, haha, they broke. It's funny. Improv, that happens so much more because it's so in the moment that sometimes I know. Like, wait, hold on, what character are you playing right now? Because I don't understand.
Right.
So it's kind of fun to, even as an audience member, to just be in on it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I never want to break, but at the same time, I love when like I'm just like almost going to, because like you're just so like in the moment, and I love when you're finding like how like maybe it's insane or maybe it's hilarious, whatever's happening. It's just so fun to like be on stage and be like, what are we doing right now? You know, like it's great. You know, I would suggest it to anyone. You know, improv is, it's just like you can't be thinking about anything else while you're doing it. So it's nice.
Right. Well, I'm glad we're doing this podcast because otherwise I'd be going crazy and just improvising to myself.
Isn't life just improv, right?
Yeah, just doing comedy bits by myself. Well, we always ask everybody, every day player that comes on the show, we ask them for a movie suggestion. And weirdly enough, Victoria, you've never seen it either. We were suggested by you, When Harry Met Sally from 1989.
Yep.
Why did you? Well, actually, you came and you said I choose Rocky, but we just filmed an episode where someone picked Rocky, and we've only filmed a few episodes. So I said maybe go with the favorite. Yeah, what's the next one? And then you said When Harry Met Sally, and I just watched it, just finished it before we started filming the podcast, and it was great. It came out in 1989. Well, why'd you pick it? Why'd you pick that movie?
I mean, that's always been one of my favorite movies. I don't remember the first time I saw it, but like I remember all through college, I would watch it when I was sick, or like I don't have a lot of movies that I like to watch a lot aside from Rocky or a few others, but it's such a good movie, and you know the actors are so good. Carrie Fisher's in. It's just like such a good, funny rom-com, but it's like, you know, it's witty, and I love old movies, you know. I'm a big fan. So yeah, it's just kind of a comfort movie, but it's also, I think, really well done.
Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm not a big romantic comedy guy.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It was fun. Billy Crystal, you know.
Yeah. I mean, how could you lose?
Right.
So good.
Well, Jillian, thank you for coming on the podcast, talking about stuff you're working on, things you're doing. Hopefully COVID blows over and all these projects that we have on hold or that we're adapting because we can't do them in person or in real life. I feel like real life is just outside this window, and it's so close.
Just beyond our reach. I've been singing Tangled a lot, right? You guys singing that song where she's like, when will my life?
Yeah.
So we're gonna drop all your links. Everybody can check out all the things that you're working on, all the projects that you're involved in, and in acting and producing and putting together. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was super fun. Love it.
Victoria, any parting words?
I love you. I think you're fantastic.
I love you.
You're an inspiring human being. I love all the work that you do. And just thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Thank you. And I should say, you know, Victoria was a huge inspiration in my writing my own show. She wrote Scar Tissue. I did this show for, you know, years before, a year or two. And I'm, you know, watching her put it all out there. So that, come on. You're amazing.
Casual hair flip.
I'm only going to bring people on the show who are going to inflate my ego. That's right.
Yeah. They come on the show and they don't give you compliments and they don't just shower you in.
Victoria's like, we're not airing it.
No, that episode's not coming out.
Yeah, we have to reshoot.
Cutting room floor.
Well, thank you, Jillian. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you another time.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you to Jill for coming on and sharing with us all of the projects and all of the things that she's doing. She's a wonderfully crazy, ambitious lady.
Yeah, she's doing quite a bit. She's definitely sticking into the musical and comedy and filmmaking genre. She does a lot of theater stuff as well. Obviously, all this stuff is on hold for COVID, but she's still working on some stuff to do in the meantime, and then has plans to make things happen once the world keeps spinning. Her movie suggestion is When Harry Met Sally. It is an American romantic comedy from 1989, written by Nora Ephron and directed by Rob Reiner. It stars Billy Crystal and as Harry, and it stars Meg Ryan as Sally. Victoria, we both watched this movie. I watched it literally an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. You watched it last night, so it's fresh in both of our minds. First impression, what did you think?
I was delightfully surprised by it. I was afraid that it was going to be dated, and I was really nervous that it was just going to be, another romantic comedy. And while I have a soft spot for them, everything, when they opened up and, you see the younger versions of them, and I don't like the younger versions of either of those characters. And then all the women are talking about getting married before it's too late and the clock is ticking. And I'm like,
They had
okay.
the one line where Sally, I think, said, "I'm gonna be 40," and he's like, "In 8 years," and she's like, "Yeah, it's around the corner, like it's coming up." I was like, really though? But it is a testament to the movie to say that a lot of that stuff that happened in it stands up to this day. A lot of the questions that they posed, like, can a guy and a girl be friends and not sleep together?
Mm-hmm.
No, that is a whole concept. They have 18 different concepts that they do in that movie. I would vote to say it's true. They can be friends. Because we're friends. Yeah. So,
But I mean,
When Harry Met Sally, we beat the system.
But I think that for a film, obviously, it's boring to just if they made a film about our friendship, it would be okay. We're gonna play video games and eat sushi. Like nothing much has happened.
That's pretty much it. It sounds like a great friendship to me, but maybe
I love it, but it's probably not that much fun to watch.
Right. So people shouldn't watch this podcast, is what you're saying, because that's what I plan to talk about for the next 2 hours is sushi and video games. Nothing to do with films. But no. Columbia Pictures released When Harry Met Sally in select cities, letting the word of mouth generate interest before it eventually gradually expanded distribution. The film grossed $92.8 million in North America. Nora Ephron received the British Academy Film Award, an Oscar nomination, and the Writers Guild of America Award nomination for her screenplay. The budget for the film was $16 million, and it brought in almost $93 million. That's quite a turnover. That's good. And it came out July 21st, 1989, 96 minutes long. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it. I mean, the only thing I knew about it was that it was a romantic comedy, and there's that one scene with Meg Ryan in the diner, and that's all I knew about it. But I had a fun time the whole way through. Billy Crystal is fun, and he's quirky and weird, and it's fun to watch him just do anything.
One of the things I loved about the film is it's essentially just the two of them talking for most of the film.
Yeah, they don't even get together until they kind of hint at it, and they're building it up and building it up and building it up. But it's not even until like 80% of the movie's over where they finally get together. And then it ruins their friendship. And of course he has to run. It wasn't raining, but I felt like he was going to be running through the rain, has to get to the train station or airport. It was very cliche after that point. But they also hit you back with the quirkiness right after. So they come in with the cheesiness, and then they're like, but remember, these are real people and real characters. And I really got that vibe that they were real people, down to earth, normal people. They played, what did they play? The board game they played, not a board game. Pictionary. They played Pictionary. Yeah. And everybody can, I think, relate to playing Pictionary once and the person draws something and it's just not at all what people are talking about.
All I could think of during that was the Family Guy clip when Stewie's playing Pictionary with the people that moved into their house, and the guy keeps going, "It's a jackal, jackal, it's a jackal, jackal." God, it's not a jackal. If it's not the jackal the first time, it's not a jackal the 50th time.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about this movie that's relatable.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things in it. Kind of also it set a lot of standards in terms of how people think in relationships. I'm sure a lot of people watch this movie and think, I can't have a guy friend or a girlfriend, or I guess that's how guys think, or that's how girls think, or whatever. My inner waiter was just pissed at Meg Ryan's at Sally. Every time she went to a restaurant and ordered anything, my inner waiter was like, fuck off.
Yeah, I think pretty much anyone in the food industry at that point was like, she's a nightmare customer.
Right. Like, Billy Crystal comes in and says, I'll take the number 3. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dream customer.
Yep.
They're friendly and they say exactly what they want and they're done. Not, I want a side salad with oil and vinegar, but also I want this baked potato, but the butter on the side. And also this, and also this. I mean, you can get what you want, but it just showed how different the characters were. I think that was an easy way to show how one of them is very laid back, down to earth. The other one is very, I don't know the word for it without being horrible and rude.
He called her uptight in the movie. He called her high maintenance, I think is
high maintenance. And her response to that was, I know what I want. And clearly she didn't, because they were in love with each other, I think, after 20 minutes, but didn't realize it, probably. They didn't really like each other, but there was that connection. I noticed a connection between them from the first moment. So, and I don't watch romantic comedies ever.
Well, I remember watching the opening credits and just seeing all the names pop up of the people involved in this, and I kept going, wait, Carrie Fisher's in this? Wait, Rob Reiner directed this? Wait a minute, Nora Ephron wrote this? Like, I literally knew nothing about this film beyond the fact that there was the fake orgasm scene in Katz's Deli, and it had Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. And whatever references in, popular culture now to it that people make. But
now I'll understand those references, because I didn't understand them before.
But something I think it's just such a well put together film, from the way they shot it with those little confessional moments with the couples all throughout it. I think that was brilliant, to see that everyone, it's not a linear path to how people get together and how their lives, it's not typical fairy book. You meet in college, you get married, you settle down, you pop out a few kids, and they start the cycle over again.
Make it sound so dreary. That's like someone's life that's like wonderful and amazing, and they met their high school sweetheart, and they have a perfect life together. That's great too. Not to put those people down.
No, you did a good job. Good for you. That's not for everybody. But and then listening to the music that they chose and the style that they chose, I think it's just, it kept it from being completely, I guess, what we think of as cheesy now in, romantic comedies with this dramatic music and soundtrack and whatever you might think a Nicholas Sparks movie would have. I think it made it a little more realistic and attainable to a regular audience,
Yeah, for sure, because everybody can relate to a relationship that they weren't expecting, or maybe they met a person, didn't like them at first, and then got to know them a lot better over time, and then it changed. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like infatuated with that person. Yeah. So, I mean, I liked the movie. I think it was great. It was a fun time watching it. I mean, I liked that it took time. It took place over the course of it had to be 10 years or so, right?
Oh, I think they said 12. By the end of it, it's 12 years.
Right. And it shows them at first they meet on this weird drive. I've never been in a situation where someone's meeting me for the first time and we're going on a very long 18-hour car ride together. But I guess the 80s were different. 89, 90.
Well, it was a 1 degree of separation between the two of them. So
I
not,
guess.
not crazy.
And they both forgot about that person immediately after that.
I felt bad for her. Like,
Right.
really cool at the beginning is like making out with her by the car and being like, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then
I'm gonna
6
call
hours,
you on the road. Like, no, you're not.
yeah, 6 hours down the road trip, he's trying to hit on Meg Ryan. So like, but I think, it definitely set the standard for romantic comedies from then on out, from that point. And you can see how many romantic comedies actually do take inspiration from that film in particular.
I think it was one of the first movies that kind of defied all the cliches, because I don't know how or what was it really one of the first romantic comedies? Because I don't know too many. I personally am ignorant to the romantic comedy genre, so I don't know how many before When Harry Met Sally there were.
I mean, there are a ton. It's changes in how the story was told. You can go all the way back to, the first few movies in black and white. I mean, one of the movies that Phil Capadora, the founder of the AFC, suggested as one of his favorite movies, Bringing Up Baby from the 30s, is a romantic comedy about the two of them getting together. And that was Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. So there are a ton. I think it's just I think Harry Met Sally is probably one of the defining romantic comedies that really brought it into a more modern telling, and that set the standard for a lot of romantic comedies that ended up following from then on out.
Very cool. I mean, yeah, I still have not watched Bringing Up Baby with Cary Grant from 1934 or 37 or whatever year it came out.
At some point, you're gonna have to watch a classic black and white film.
I mean, I'll watch Citizen Kane. I'll watch Casablanca. I'll watch any of the classics. I have seen Citizen Kane. I like Citizen Kane. That's supposed to be, according to all my film professors in college, that was the amazing peak of filmmaking. And
that's like everyone saying Hamlet is like the for Shakespeare and for theater.
It's a matter of opinion, isn't it?
Yes. I disagree with that, but that's a whole other podcast.
Let's get into some current events. We have a few things going on. Namely, we have some things happening during COVID that might normally not have happened. We have the show Parks and Recreation, and their entire cast is reuniting for a Corona charity episode. So they're going to do a new Parks and Rec episode. The show ended years ago. Went off the air in 2015. It stars Amy Poehler, Rashida Jones, Aziz Ansari, Nick Offerman, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Pratt, Adam Scott, Rob Lowe, Jim O'Hare, and Retta. I think she just has one name, Retta. I love this show. I'm so happy that it, is coming back, even just for an episode, and it's for a good cause to raise money for COVID and to try to help out. I don't know, are they going to do a Zoom thing? They're not really explaining what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. It might be funny because at the end of Parks and Rec, all these characters kind of went off on their different paths into different areas of the country. So it may be funny to show them as if it was like today and they're all on Zoom chats together, just reuniting, like trying to get through the COVID together. It'd be funny if they played off the actual thing that's going on.
They're gonna have to. They can't film it like a normal episode, so it's gonna have to be COVID centered with Zoom chats and things like that. It's just, I'm going to be interested to see what they do with characters. Like, I know I personally have not gone that far into the series. I think I got like through all the way through season 2, I think maybe. And life got in the way and I never got back to it. But I know the basics of it. Chris Pratt and Aubrey Plaza are a couple in the show. Amy Poehler and Adam Scott are a couple in the show. And like how they're going to be able to reconcile the fact that if they're doing it over Zoom, that these people are not in the same place with each other. How are we doing that?
Yeah, I would imagine it's all going to happen over Zoom. A friend of mine recently did a reading. So she wrote a script and she got a bunch of people attached to it. And I think the script was about to move forward, and then COVID happened. So they adapted and they did a reading over Zoom of the first episode of the show. I wish I could remember the name of it right now. But the writer is someone I've worked with a couple of times. Her name is Tracy Lehman. She put together a whole show. She's got a lot of people involved in the project too. Gary Cole, Alan Tudyk. I'm freezing up on the cast, but that's something we can maybe talk about at another time. But people are adapting. People are using Zoom. People are making it happen.
I mean, Saturday Night Live, they're doing their at-home, versions of skits and things, and just making things happen with the stuff that the writers and the actors have in their houses. I mean, look at what John Krasinski is doing with Some Good News. It's created completely out of a necessity for something good during the time of coronavirus. But he's doing it all from home. He did a whole Zoom thing. He did a Zoom prom. I think he's doing a Zoom graduation is the next thing that they're doing.
Very cool. I mean, there's, Some Good News with John Krasinski. There's the Parks and Rec reboot. And then there's us. There's also us. We're also creating some content for people to view. So we're just as great as all those people. Speaking of adapting for the times, Oscars 2021 are talking about the Academy relaxing eligibility rules for VOD titles, video on demand titles, and it's combining categories and it's changing. 2020 basically screwed up everything that the Oscars would normally do, planning it to any movies that come out this year, if they come out. It's a limited thing because there's a whole chunk of the year where we don't have any movies. So it's a little tricky. I don't know. It depends too on when we reopen. But the Oscars are adapting a little bit. They're loosening their usual strictness regarding movies that are released directly to on-demand things like Netflix or Hulu. It's becoming easier for movies that are released to those services to be considered for Oscars, which is kind of cool. They also combined sound categories. I didn't see details on that, but it looks like they are condensing things. It looks like they're just combining things, and it looks like they're just changing it up a little bit to make sense, because some of the things, like we talked about earlier, some of the things with COVID just might not make sense to have a whole category for it this year.
But I have to wonder, they're relaxing the rules at least this year on, video on demand. And something that the article pointed out, the only films that originally were slated to have a theatrical release or will have a theatrical release after all the shutdown stuff is done are going to be eligible. So a film like Bad Education, which this article argued was one of the best films of the year, is only available on HBO. So that is not eligible for an Academy Award because it's not going to have a theatrical release. And I had to wonder, we're talking about the downturn of theaters and things like that. Eventually, a lot of theaters, it's not going to be a regular thing to have a full and complete theatrical release. A lot of things are going towards streaming sites and on-demand videos. I mean, it's more cost effective for the customer for sure. I know when Nick and I, if we go out to a movie out, it's absolutely for sure want to see in the theater. And we know that the experience of watching it in the theater is going to be very important. But for a lot of films, if we watch a trailer of something, it's I'll wait till it comes out and we'll just rent it.
I'm the same way. If it's not like a big action movie where you have to see it on a big screen to really appreciate, or it might be tough to watch on a 15-inch MacBook screen later on, or your TV, even if you have a 55-inch TV. We've talked about it before. There's no substitute for the movie theater experience. No. But I'm the same way. If it's a comedy or something that doesn't really require a massive screen, I'm willing to wait most of the time.
But is the Academy going to continue this as a normal thing year after year, or is this just for in the time of COVID?
Well, tune into our podcast next year where we talk about that. Who knows? I mean, we might have to wait until next year to really find that out, because they might loosen their strictness about it, and then they might make it more strict again. Who knows? I know my buddy's been bothering me to watch the new movie with Chris Hemsworth, directed by the Russo brothers, titled Extraction, that came to Netflix. Apparently it's really good. It's a big budget action movie, and it's just straight to Netflix. So I don't know if it was even planned for a theatrical release. I think it was just going to go to Netflix. But, you know, if that movie is so good, does it deserve to be considered for an Oscar, whether it went to theaters or not? That's a whole subject of debate.
Yeah, I personally, I don't see any reason why it having to be released in theaters makes it more or less worthy of an award nomination or not. If it's a good film, it's a good film. Doesn't matter if it got released in a theater or if it didn't. It's still a good product. And if it deserves an award, then if it deserves accolades, it deserves accolades. That's how I feel about it.
I mean, the same can be said too for indie movies, or I mean, there's so many award things for indie movies. I'd love if Oscars were to consider indie movies too. That'd be cool. I don't think there is an indie movie category, is there?
No, but I don't think it's necessarily like, if something could still be an indie movie and go up for an Oscar. I think Fruitvale Station was nominated for Oscars, and that technically is an independent film. But I think it's, you know, because it was released in theaters, that was part of, you know, why it was accepted. But I think so. I mean, and there's also a trend of like some of these films that are up for award season are only released in select theaters, and they are indie films. They are lesser known. They're the more artistic films or whatever, you know, people feel, you know, fit in award ceremony. But not a lot of the general populace always gets to see all these films. It's not like when Titanic was you know, everyone in the world saw that film. Of course it was up for an Academy Award, but I think in the last couple of years, like, we live in New York City, so we have access to a lot of theaters that will show these films. But if I went back home to Pennsylvania, I might not be able to see half of the things that are up for the award ceremony, and that's probably one of the reasons why viewership on the Oscars is down. People don't know these films, they're not connected with them. So why not allow films that are available for video on demand and streaming in the Oscars? Like, I don't understand what the block is there, because then actually you might get more viewership from people who are rooting and pulling for these films that they actually get to see.
Right. I think it's just the people that run the Academy being snooty, wanting to put up their noses, flip their hair, and say, well, it wasn't in the theater, so it can't be considered a real film, which is nonsense, because there's teams of people working to adapt the script and make it into a film. Another thing I thought of too while we're talking about this, because we disagreed a little bit on the term adaptation, and because we're talking about this subject too, where should movies, video on demand movies, be considered for Oscars, it might be good to hear some comments from people. So if you guys are listening and you want to comment your thoughts, maybe you agree with me, obviously, or if you maybe agree with Victoria on the term adaptation. Yeah. We'll leave that up to the commenters. They know the right answer. But leave a comment. Leave your thoughts. We want to know. Let's talk a little bit about AMC, our final current event, AMC Theaters. They came out and they said a couple days ago that they are refusing to play Universal movies when theaters reopen. And the reason for this is because Universal Pictures had all these big deals with AMC Theaters to put their movies in their theaters. Now the theaters all closed because of COVID. So Universal said, well, we don't want to waste these movies. We don't want to, wait forever to put them out. Let's put them on video on demand sites like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, what have you. And AMC Theaters did not take to that very kindly. They're pretty pissed, and they're pretty much saying we're not going to do business with them anymore, because a lot of their movies that were going to bring in business for AMC Theaters, they went straight to the internet. So now when theaters do reopen up, a lot of AMC theaters are like, what do we have? You know,
I honestly think that's just it's an overreaction on the theater's part. You have to adapt during COVID-19. And yeah, they're essentially, what the article said is, it sounds like they're just playing chicken with Universal, because Universal has these big budget titles coming up like Fast and Furious and all of that stuff. You're telling me that AMC is not going to release them in theaters, all because they released Trolls World Tour on video on demand? Come on.
I don't know if it's just Trolls. I don't know what other movies are attached to the Universal name. I'm looking on the website now, and I'm seeing Mulan. I think that's tied into Universal. Quiet Place. I mean, I'm just seeing the images here. I'm assuming that because they're on the article, they are a part of it. I know the Trolls.
Mulan's Disney, though. Is Disney and Universal partnering up?
Universal, I mean, these studios are so massive that I wouldn't be surprised if Universal's a part of every single movie that has ever come out, ever. If you told me that they played a small part, I'd be like, sure, yeah. But it's a massive studio. So to say that we're never going to play any of their movies again is kind of crazy, because AMC is already, the movie theater industry is already pretty tough, because
AMC is getting ready to file for bankruptcy because of the huge downturn in movie theater attendance. And it's not just because you can, because you can stream a lot of stuff at home, and it's not that much of a turnaround time now. Like, I remember when I was a kid, it felt like a year would go by from the time a movie was in the theater to the time you could get it on VHS and take it home. But now it feels like you literally go like a month after the film is no longer available in the theater and it's streaming on Netflix, or you can rent it on Amazon for $4.99 or whatever, what have you. But, going to the movies for me and Nick costs around $40 some odd. Who has that money to spend all the time? So you're turning your nose up at possible revenue because you're angry they didn't consult you first? What are they going to do? Like, sit on those films for months? And then, I mean, it's not only the films that are supposed to be released now, like right at the beginning of COVID. What happens if we're a couple months down the road and we've opened up slightly, but you still can't have gatherings of more than 50 people? Well, you're going to be backed up with a lot of titles that were supposed to get released between now and then. It's not going to matter if they release a couple of the ones from the beginning on demand. You're not going to have enough screens to show everything anyway. So I honestly think they're just overreacting, and they're pissed, and they're lashing out. They're not being rational.
I mean, I see it. I agree with you there. I do see their side of it a little bit, in terms of like, they're already not a dying industry, but there's, it's not an easy industry to be in a movie theater. And then it's almost like this whole studio kind of swept out the rug from under them during the worst disaster where all of their businesses are shut down. They're kind of in a bad position, and it's almost like getting kicked while they're down. And so I understand that they're like lashing out, but it's very reactionary to be like, well, we're never showing your movies again. It's just very angry.
Great. When we open back up, we can have people, then you're not going to show some of the biggest titles that actually bring people to the theater. Like, that makes no sense.
Right. And I mean, I can't say that I think Bloodshot was really going to be a game changer for the film industry. But there's quite a few movies that I'm sure Universal was attached to or will be attached to in the future. For AMC to just say we're not working with them anymore, that's a big thing. I'm sure Regal Theaters is sitting there going, like, when do we put out the press release that we're going to show movies as soon as we can? Or we're going to show all the movies. Because Regal does that, and as soon as they say that, everyone's like, fuck AMC, I'm going to Regal. Done. Because those are the two I know. I don't know of any other two massive film or movie theater companies. I know AMC, I know Regal. Are there any others? What else?
Like big movie theater chains that go across.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Not that I know of. If I think of a movie theater, those are the two that I think of.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning too that we're in New York. We're in New York City, Astoria. Movie tickets here are like $19-20, give or take. If you see a 3D movie, if you see an IMAX movie, you're probably dropping 25. There's still places in America that people aren't spending 12. They're spending like $12 to see a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the areas where it's more expensive too, they had things like Movie Pass for a while. That failed.
Wasn't a sustainable business model, but I
Right.
mean,
Movie
I
Pass
love
went bankrupt. AMC then created their own version, and I believe Regal has their own version of sort of like a subscription. You pay a certain amount a month. You can see as many movies as you want. As to how well that was working, I don't really know. But it's a little tricky because now you can't go to the movies no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm curious too. Are those people still getting billed for those monthly bills? If you had an AMC monthly subscription and all the movie theaters are closed and they're still billing you, I want to hear about it because that sounds fun to talk about. We'll have you on the podcast or something. Have you be like, "Where's my $80 AMC?"
Yeah, I can't go. And then they pull up your records that shows you haven't gone in like 6 months. So you would, even if COVID wasn't happening, you still wouldn't go to the theater, but it's fine.
Right. I mean, I used to use MoviePass. When I got MoviePass, the first movie I saw with it was Blade Runner 2049. So I spent like the monthly amount, I think at the time was like $8. And MoviePass was made more than pays for itself, because if we're paying $20-something for a movie ticket, and granted, it only used to give like standard movie tickets. It wasn't doing like 3D or IMAX or whatever, but I saw it on like a Wednesday afternoon. I saw Blade Runner 2049 for the monthly price of $8, and I saw like 2 other movies that month on top of that. And then the whole company collapsed in on itself like a dying star, but I did get my money's worth out of it.
That was the best thing of like in New York, unlike other places, it's all public transportation and it takes an hour to get anywhere. So if you have a chunk of time, like if I had a chunk of time between an audition and having to go to work or having to go somewhere else, and you didn't know what to do with yourself and you didn't want to just go park your ass in a coffee shop for 2 hours, the Movie Pass was great because I could just go do my audition, catch a movie, and then go to work instead of having to by the time I get to my front door, I'll have to turn around and come right back, kind of a thing.
That was struggle, yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, you can't really take naps in the car. You could always take a nap in the subway, but no, shake your head no.
No, big no.
Well, that's what's going on in the world right now. COVID-19 is really taking its toll upon the film industry. It's changing. It's ever changing. I'm sure we're going to come out of this and things will be different. Hopefully not too different, so that we can still go to the movies, still enjoy them, and still have a good time. Hopefully keep some distance, maybe 6 feet apart to watch our movies. But I'd really hate to lose the movie theater experience. I saw another article, I don't have it, but about the reemergence of drive-in movie theaters. And I've been talking about that to a bunch of people and thinking that's a great idea. Sucks for us, but maybe there's a big park somewhere with a big building that has a big wall that can project a movie onto, where people can sit 6 feet apart in the park and look up at the projection. But I don't know. That might be tough for Astoria or Manhattan if you don't have a car.
That it's gonna vary from place to place whether or not like a drive-in movie or projecting something up on a wall is going to work for you. I think I saw in an article of like positive things that people are doing during COVID was a man was projecting classic films on to a building wall, and he was sharing like a website where people could stream the audio to it so they could watch it from their homes.
That's fun.
Yeah, I don't know. Out of my window, I can see a partitioned brick wall between the back of our building and another building. So I don't think that would work too well for where I'm at, but I like the idea.
Hey, I have a projector. It's not a great projector, but I can always project a movie across the street onto my neighbor's house, and they have a bunch of windows, so they can just have it in their house or something. But that's obviously super disruptive. You'd have to have the right space with the right wall. it can't, it has to be done at night because these projectors don't really work outside like that. Who knows if drive-in movie theaters are going to really make a huge comeback like that. It might be a temporary comeback, and then maybe AMC's around or Regal can open up in certain areas where they have this big space, because movie theaters are pretty big. Sometimes they're attached to other complexes and stuff. I had a movie theater by me growing up, the Comac Multiplex. It was this huge parking lot, and it was just by itself. I could see something like that happening there, where they have a big enough wall and they can project some movies, have some cars pull up, because everyone's safe in their cars, for sure. I'm sure people will miss paying $17 for a thing of popcorn and a soda, but get over yourself. Bring your own snacks to the drive-in.
Now you don't have to hide them in your purse. You can just keep them in your car.
I always hid them in my purse. I always brought snacks in my purse. Well, I think that's a good place as any. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for watching and listening to the AFC podcast. You can like, you can comment, you can subscribe. Please stay tuned for future episodes.
We'd like to thank Jillian Vitko, our day player for today, for joining us on the podcast. We'll include all the links so you can see all her stuff and keep updated on what she's doing. And my name is Victoria Fragnito.
I'm Jim Galizia. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.